Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up in the next 1 hour. South Africa's president announces the expansion of Brics with 6 new nations joining the bloc from the 1st of January next year. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulates new member nations, saying the additions will strengthen the bloc.
नए सदस्यों के जुड़ने से ब्रिक्स एक संगठन के रूप में मजबूत तथा हमारे सभी साझा प्रयासों को एक नया बल देने वाला होगा.
Prime Minister Modi addresses the G20 trade ministers meeting through a video link, says India is committed to being the 3rd largest global economy in the next few years. And Japan begins releasing the Fukushima nuclear plant's contaminated water into the ocean amid growing protests in neighboring nations. And after 2 tense and fast-paced tiebreakers, Magnus Carlsen beats Indian Grandmaster R. Pragnananda at the Chess World Cup. Well, first, let's get you all the updates on the 15th BRICS Summit underway in Johannesburg. Well, in a historic announcement, 6 new countries will be joining the BRICS bloc. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa declared Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE as the new members from the 1st of January 2024. On the final day of the 15th BRICS Summit, the group members reached consensus on the expansion guidelines and also adopted the Johannesburg Second Declaration.
The 5 BRICS countries, we have reached agreement on the guiding principles, standards, criteria, and procedures of the BRICS expansion process, which has been in discussion for quite a while. We have consensus on the first phase of this expansion process. We have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS. The membership will take effect from the 1st of January 2024.
So you have it there, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE will be full members of the BRICS with effect from the 1st of January next year.
BRICS leaders in the 15th BRICS Summit have over the past 2 days had occasion to have discussions both in a retreat form as well as in a proper official summit, have reached a conclusion to adopt the Johannesburg II Declaration, encompasses and covers the various issues that the leaders had to decide on. These matters have been in discussion, and in the end, a declaration has now been adopted as Declaration 2, a Johannesburg Declaration 2, and is adopted.
Adding to the big-ticket announcement of BRICS' expansion, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that India has always supported the expansion of BRICS.
भारत का ये मत रहा है कि नए सदस्यों के जुड़ने से ब्रिक्स एक संगठन के रूप में मजबूत तथा हमारे सभी साझा प्रयासों को एक नया बल देने वाला होगा। इस कदम से विश्व के अनेक देशों का मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर में विश्वास और सुदृढ़ होगा। मुझे खुशी है कि हमारी टीम्स ने मिलकर एक्सपांशन के गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल्स, स्टैंडर्ड्स, क्राइटेरिया और प्रोसीड्यूर पर सहमति बनाई है और इनके आधार पर आज हम अर्जेंटीना, इजिप्ट, ईरान, सऊदी अरब, इथियोपिया और यूएई का ब्रिक्स में स्वागत करने के लिए सहमत हुए हैं। सबसे पहले मैं इन देशों के लीडर्स और वहाँ के नागरिकों को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूँ।
And joining the other BRICS leaders virtually during the announcement, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the adoption of the guiding principles in the expansion of BRICS will ensure that the role and global importance of BRICS will continue to grow.
I would like to mention it has to do with ensuring settlements between our countries in economic terms. I would like to congratulate new BRICS members on the full membership. They will assume their membership next year. Let me assure all of the colleagues that we will keep up with the work that we have launched to expand BRICS' influence in the world.
And if you talk about what happens on the sidelines of the BRICS summit, India's Prime Minister held talks with Mozambique President Filipe Jacinto Nyusi in Johannesburg, South Africa. In fact, Prime Minister Modi engaged in a series of bilateral meetings with the other world leaders on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. Among them, the PM met his Ethiopian counterpart and discussed issues of mutual interest. And Prime Minister Modi also held a bilateral meeting with the President of Senegal, Macky Sall, on the concluding day of the BRICS summit. And the final day of the summit also saw the leaders of the member countries gathering for the closing ceremony of the summit. The heads of the bloc's member nations came together on stage for a group photograph to mark the end of the three-day summit in Johannesburg. Let's now take you across to my colleague DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh for a sum-up really of what has happened in Johannesburg over the last 3 days. Shubhendu, the biggest takeaway of course being the expansion of the BRICS, 6 new countries joining in. What have you been hearing in terms of how that alters the shape and form of BRICS and what it can do in the coming days?
Right, Gautam, good evening from Johannesburg. The inclusion of 6 new members in the BRICS grouping is hugely important, not just for the grouping, but for the representation of the greater global south. It offers a message to the world outside that the reform of multilateral institutions that these developing economies, emerging economies have been so vociferously arguing for, they also do it in their own grouping. So the reform of the BRICS grouping sends out an important message to other such institutions, such as the United Nations, to United Nations Security Council, to also move ahead and look at the way forward only in the manner where the multilateral institutions are reformed, more voices from the global south, more countries from the global south find representations in these core bodies, and therefore hugely important, not just for strengthening BRICS and making it more influential body, but also the message, the symbolism that it sort of stands for the world at large.
And in terms of the Africa outreach and BRICS Plus, India in particular, Prime Minister Modi had some very pointed messages to give out there as well that spoke to the kind of multilateral efforts that India is making along with these BRICS partners to ensure that you know, the peace and prosperity in the world is further extended and distributed all over the place.
Absolutely. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while talking about the Africa outreach, India's own engagement with Africa, the continent as a whole, first emphasized upon how it is not just a diplomatic assignment, but the fact that there are civilizational links between India and Africa, people-to-people connectivity. He gave example of Mahatma Gandhi, his legacy, and how it is intertwined with the legacy of Nelson Mandela in South Africa. And after those examples, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in fact, listed all the ways in which India has already been engaging as a development partner with Africa, whether it is innovations such as telemedicine, tele-education, whether it is helping Africa with vaccines during the peak of the pandemic, whether it is capacity building initiatives that India very extensively has engaged in as far as Africa is concerned, training the youth for more vocational opportunity. He also spoke about that Africa's 2063 agenda. India sees itself as a vital partner, as a reliable development partner in helping Africa achieve its goal of becoming an economic powerhouse, becoming the economic center of development for the world. And more importantly, the manner in which India is going to do that is not as a country which is more resourceful, but as a partner, as an equal. And this development of Africa is going to be led by Africa, led by Africans.
Right. And we also saw through the course of the last 3 days, including today, Prime Minister Modi holding some bilaterals on the sidelines of the summit. What was the thrust, if one were to look at all of them, of these bilaterals?
All these bilaterals, if you look at Gautam, the common element is that these are countries of the global south, leading countries of the global south. And this grouping, BRICS, represents the most influential of them all. And together, they're able to become a more stronger voice in the global order. Now, these meetings also, in a way, emphasize upon India's development partnership with each of these nations. India has time and again spoken about the manner in which the priorities of the global south must take centrality in the global order of things if the world is to achieve important common objectives such as climate change resilience or sustainable development goals. And India, a country who lectures and goes their own different path, but India talks about solutions and helps nations achieve those solutions. So in that sense, the development partnership with each of these countries is going to be taken forward, whether it is renewable energy technology sharing, whether it is capacity building initiatives. So in those sense, those were some of the common elements in Prime Minister's engagement bilaterally with the leaders of these nations.
So all in all, quite a successful visit there for Prime Minister Modi and for the BRICS leaders in Johannesburg. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Shubhendu Ghosh. Let's also quickly cut across to Moscow and look at what's happened in Johannesburg from Russia's perspective as well. Good evening to you, Dasha from New Delhi. Now, what has Moscow been saying about, and particularly President Putin, the kind of utterances that he had? What does that indicate in terms of the kind of expectations that he has from the BRICS with this expansion?
Well, as we have heard the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov giving his final remarks after the BRICS summit, he said that the reason for the growth of the BRICS bloc is the understanding of the root causes that have led to the Western countries trying to preserve their hegemony on the world stage. And this, according to the Russian Foreign Minister, is the reason why this bloc is extending. Russia says it is indeed a very important step forward because thanks to that, the BRICS countries will have a larger say. The countries of the global south that have been, according to Moscow, largely underrepresented on the world stage will definitely have more say. And certainly, from the Russian perspective, this will be a stepping stone in creating the multipolar world. The Russian president earlier today, addressing the BRICS leaders and the summit itself, has said very clearly that the Western countries were not ready to give up their neo-colonial ambitions, and the Western countries have been trying to preserve this so-called rules-based world order that was serving only their selfish interests. But this is going to end, and according to Moscow, the process of independence, of non-reliance of those countries that are not in the West on the Western infrastructure in all spheres has already started and become inevitable. One such example is the de-dollarization of the global economy, and starting with the trade relations among the BRICS states.
And the way the the outlook of or the nature of BRICS changes. Earlier, BRICS with the 5 nations, the original 5 nations had the biggest producers of food in the world. Now, some massive oil producers are also joining it. So another dimension that gives a lot of heft to BRICS. How does Moscow see this particular dimension being added to BRICS?
Well, as we understand, Moscow believes that there is the complementarity among the BRICS countries, and there is no competition, and the BRICS countries in general are not posing a threat to anyone. This is not the bloc against someone. It is the bloc to support one another in this global world. So certainly from the Russian perspective, it is the strengths that all of these countries that will be underlined by the membership in this union. We also understand there will be more partners announced within the BRICS group, and certainly this means the tighter cooperation around among anyone who is related to the BRICS bloc. Also, very importantly, when it comes to the food supplies, the Russian president has been saying that Moscow is a reliable supplier of agricultural goods to the international markets. Russia has vowed to supply several African countries for free after Russia's decision to not to extend its participation in the Black Sea grain deal, and Moscow says it is ready to develop the infrastructure that will not be reliant on the West when it comes to the transportation, when it comes to the economy, trade, financial issues, and many others. So certainly it is the complementarity of the BRICS countries that is going to be underlined.
All right. Darshan, thank you so much for joining us from Moscow on the biggest move that the BRICS has made ever since that bank was formulated, the New Development Bank. Now it's being expanded. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Prime Minister Modi is now set to visit Greece to take bilateral ties forward with the Mediterranean nation after winding up his Johannesburg tour. And the Indian Prime Minister tells G20 finance ministers that India remains committed to emerging as the world's 3rd largest economy in the coming years.
Swagatam to Andhra Pradesh, the coastal jewel of India. A state steeped in history. From the Gandi Kota Fort to the majestic Gondapalli Fort. A region known as the Rice Bowl of India. A holy land with rivers Krishna and Godavari flowing through it. Every part of this land tells a story of culture and devotion. And of a modern, developed, vibrant India. The graceful Kuchipudi and exuberant Dhimsa showcase the artistic brilliance of this land. The Ikkat and Kalamkari speak of the talent of artisans and their skilled hands. A cultural concoction that unites people.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will pay an official visit to Greece on Friday at the invitation of his Greek counterpart, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. This will be the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Greece in 40 years. India and Greece enjoy civilizational ties which have strengthened in recent years through cooperation in areas like maritime transport, defense, trade and investment.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will travel to Greece for an official visit on 25th of August after wrapping up his visit to Johannesburg for the BRICS summit. On his arrival at Athens, Prime Minister Modi will be accorded a ceremonial welcome. He will pay a visit to the tomb of the unknown soldier to lay a wreath. Indian Prime Minister will have a packed schedule where he will hold delegation-level talks with Prime Minister of Greece.
During the Honourable Prime Minister's visit to Greece, both sides will look to expand and diversify the trade and investment segment of cooperation, deepen and expand the defence and security partnership, infrastructure cooperation, shipbuilding industry, something which is a great strength of Greece and where the opportunities, extensive opportunities are there, energy, agriculture, education, and as I mentioned earlier, migration and mobility. The visit would give both sides an opportunity to discuss also the regional and global issues of mutual interest and help broaden and deepen our bilateral engagement.
Prime Minister Modi will also be interacting with the Indian diaspora in Greece. Both leaders would also address the key businesses of both the countries.
It is after 4 decades that a prime ministerial visit from India is taking place to Greece. Greece is one of India's important European partners, a member of the NATO, as well as a gateway to the European market. During Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Greece, there will be a lot of subjects on the table, be it expanding and diversifying trade and investments, deepening the security and defense cooperation between both the countries, as well as the shipbuilding infrastructure development and connectivity.
Both the Prime Ministers met in New York in September 2019 on the sidelines of the UNGA. This visit is expected to give opportunity for India and Greece to broaden and deepen bilateral engagements. Meghna Dev's report, DD India.
And to get you more on the Prime Minister's upcoming visit, DD India spoke with Indian visitors in Athens who said that India's image around the globe has improved in the last 9 years.
Here in Athens at the beautiful architectural and historical spot of the Acropolis, and we are joined in by some Indian tourists who have come here to have a beautiful tour across Greece, and they are here in Athens. We'll just catch up quickly with them before Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival in Athens for an official visit.
Heard so much about Mr. Modi visiting Athens.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the progress he has made for India. He's projected India's image really well. There's a positive image of India even in the US, which didn't exist like 25 years ago when we first moved there. So really happy for all the progress that he's made.
It's an excellent thing to understand and know for everybody to, for India's image has been up in the global arena. That's really good. And he has done a great job. I mean, everywhere in the country, outside the country, image as well as Chandrayaan. I'm really excited to see that land in a couple of minutes or 30 minutes. So, yeah. Everything overall is great.
About the diaspora, you guys are a part of the diaspora in a sense. How do you look at it? Because the connect with the diaspora has strengthened, the cultural bridge, the bridge with the diaspora has strengthened.
Yes, it did, definitely. It's improved the multicultural and multilingual improvement around the states and cities, even the international people. Yeah. It's really improved and really great. Yeah.
Wherever Narendra Modi is, it's a proud moment for us. We all Indians are very happy, very proud for Narendra Modi being our Prime Minister, because everywhere we go, now they respect us. This is a very good feeling for us.
I'm wondering that why since last 40 years no Indian Prime Minister visited this beautiful country, nice people. Beautiful people here. In India, you can buy anything, even the smallest things, in digital payment through the QR code. So I've realized this, the transformation that has actually happened since last 6-7 years that I'm seeing, right? This is really good for us, and I'm really proud moment for us, right? And I'm glad that he's visiting in the Greece, the wonderful country, very beautiful people here.
So definitely Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Greece is extremely historic, as it is happening about after almost 4 decades, and that's what the people who are from the diaspora or the tourists who have come here to Athens to visit this beautiful country definitely have to say that Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes the growth story of India wherever he goes globally. With camera person Shailendra Chauhan, this is Meghna Dev for DD India from Athens, Greece.
And let's now get you some quick updates from around the country as well. That is India. Now, the mayhem caused by the monsoon continues to impact the Indian state of Himachal Pradesh. The incessant rains have obstructed national highways. Over 400 roads have been closed. According to official data, at least 10 people have died so far due to separate incidents like heavy rains and cloud bursts in the last couple of days. 2 other people are said to be missing so far. Meanwhile, a massive landslide hit Kullu district of India's Himachal Pradesh state on Thursday as well. Footage showed multiple buildings turning into debris within seconds. However, the damage is yet to be fully assessed. As of now, there's been no report of any loss of lives. since the building was reportedly evacuated just a few days ago. Met Department officials have issued a red alert of heavy to very heavy rainfall for the next 2 days in the hilly state. And the flood situation in India's state of Assam has deteriorated further following heavy rains. The torrential rains have also triggered floods in various districts in the state. The Brahmaputra River, as it's flowing right now, is above the danger level. The Indian Met Department on Thursday forecast that isolated heavy to very heavy rainfall is likely to take place in Assam and other northeastern states till the 26th of August, that is Saturday. Furthermore, the Indian Met Department issued an orange alert in several parts of the state as well. An under-construction building in India's Mizoram state collapsed, leading to a devastating loss of lives. The search and rescue operation has been underway. Officials say that 23 out of 26 workers who were present at the site are believed to have lost their lives as far as this under-construction bridge is concerned. And still to come on DD India News are congratulations from around the world keep pouring in over India's moon landing success as Chandrayaan-3 deploys its rover to roam the lunar South Pole. And China bans Japanese seafood after Japan starts dumping contaminated water into the Pacific from the defunct Fukushima nuclear power plant.
Your name, Ina Krishnamurthy, it sounds so much like an Indian name.
My grandfather fascinated with Mahabharata, Ramayana stories, so he gave my father's name Krishnamurthy.
The handing over of the gavel by Indonesian President in Bali to Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Of course, it's a fascinating, memorable history.
What does Indonesia think is the biggest challenge in the Indo-Pacific?
We don't want this region to be part of any conflict, not unilateral actions.
How does Indonesia see the Quad partnership?
We see it as a plus.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India and this is News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Before we move any further, another look at our top stories. South Africa's president announces the expansion of Brics with 6 new nations set to join the bloc at the start of next year. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulates the new nations joining Brics, saying the additions will strengthen the bloc. And Prime Minister Modi also addresses the G20 trade ministers meeting through a video link, says India is committed to becoming the third largest global economy in the next few years. Let's now take you back to one of our top stories, which is how Prime Minister Modi, after winding up his visit to Johannesburg, is set to visit Athens in Greece for a bilateral tour there. And this will be for the first time that an Indian Prime Minister will be there in Greece in 40 years. Meghna Dev, my colleague, is joining us from Athens live right now. Meghna, that is quite a calling card that Prime Minister Modi has right now in terms of a successful Chandrayaan landing on moon, to be coming to Greece after 40 years. An Indian Prime Minister will be visiting, so there must be a lot of ground to cover as well.
Yes, so definitely a very significant visit, Gautam, of the Indian Prime Minister, because if you see a prime ministerial visit from India is taking to Greece about after 40 years, so definitely it makes it very significant. Besides that, also we know that there are many topics on the table. Looking at Prime Minister Narendra Modi's power-packed schedule, which is expected to happen, throughout the day tomorrow. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be arriving very early morning here in Athens, and then after that he will be going to lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier. Besides that, also he will be receiving a ceremonial welcome. And also there are important meetings that are being held by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Delegation level talks definitely on the agenda. Besides that, talks and interactions with businesses and people from the business industry. So that is going to be extremely important. Also, there are, Prime Minister Narendra Modi may meet a few influencers of hot leaders. And also, very important, just like, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's, we can say it is his trademark in every visit that he obviously addresses the community. So he will be addressing the community, Indian diaspora here in Athens. And important also, we see that when in Athens, and specifically in Greece, we do not have a huge diaspora. The diaspora is somewhere around 14 to 15,000 people. But still, Prime Minister Narendra Modi definitely chooses to interact with the diaspora every time he is on a visit abroad. So this time around also, he will be winding up his visit with interaction with the diaspora, and the preparations of which are underway. We were just talking to some of the important people who will be welcoming Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the diaspora event, and we will bring you the report shortly on DD India.
All right. Sounds great. But Meghna, just tell us what is the current level and status of India's ties with Greece, and what areas are likely to be explored in order to, extend them even further, make further progress on them?
So first, definitely a very important thing to look out for is trade and investment. When India is looking at the European market, India definitely knows that the gateway to the European market is through Greece. So obviously that is an important sector. Diversifying and expanding trade and investments will be on the agenda, will be top on the agenda when obviously, on lunch, both the Prime Ministers, the Greece Prime Minister as well as the Indian Prime Minister are meeting business leaders. So trade and investment on the agenda. If you look at the bilateral trade for 2022-23, we definitely see there is a lot more potential. It is somewhere around 2,000 million US. So there is definitely a lot more potential for the trade to be enhanced and diversified. Besides that, an important sector is obviously strengthening and deepening our cooperation in security and defense areas. And also the shipbuilding sector is also something very important, because we know, through the ports are very essential, and the strategic location, the very important location that Greece provides is definitely going to be important on that aspect. Also, Greece is putting a lot of emphasis on welcoming Indian students to study in Greece. So migration, mobility, education, those will be on the agenda. And definitely when we are talking about the current situation here in Greece, obviously we know that there are, forest fires and situations, obviously the calamities that is taking place. Yes. So definitely renewable energy as well as emphasis will be more on green energy and on that sector. So, obviously putting trade and investment on the top. Second, important matter of discussion will be defense and security ties, obviously following by what I just explained to our viewers.
All right. All right. We look forward to what you might have to tell us tomorrow when Prime Minister Modi lands there. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Meghna Dev from Athens. Now, former U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to surrender at the Fulton County Jail in Atlanta later tonight, Georgia, that is in Georgia, on racketeering and conspiracy charges. Trump and 18 others face felony charges after a Georgia grand jury used a law developed to take down organized crime gangs. He is charged with trying to overturn his 2020 election defeat. All right, let's go across to Sally Madison joining us from New York for more on this. Good evening to you, Sally, from New Delhi. In terms of what's happening, what can we expect to unfold in the coming few hours as soon as we have Donald Trump landing in Atlanta?
Well, after many days of anticipation, we've seen so much action there in Atlanta, Georgia, and now finally the day has come where former President Donald Trump is expected to take his plane from New Jersey all the way to Atlanta, where he will go into that jail and he will basically turn himself in to authorities there. We don't know exact timings as of yet, but we are expecting it within the next few hours later in the afternoon local time on Thursday. And what we're expecting is for him to be led into that Fulton County jail. He'll have his security team around him, his Secret Service, as he always does, and they will make sure that he is kept safe. And so while the sheriff's office is claiming that this is going to be just like any other person coming in to go through that booking system, actually we're expecting certain differences. As I say, he will have his security. It's still unclear whether there will certainly be a mugshot taken of him. We've seen his co-defendants, 18 in total, but we've seen several of those come in over the past few days to that jail as well. And they have had those mugshots taken, and we've seen those released in the media here in the US. And so there is talk that that could also happen to Donald Trump. In his last 3 court cases that we've seen in recent months, he hasn't had to have that photo taken, and that's because authorities say that, you know, he's not a flight risk in the sense that he's so recognizable that there are many other pictures of him that they can use. But as I say, authorities are saying that he will be treated like others. He's also expected to have that fingerprint taken as well, as many others do. He's not expected to spend any serious time in a cell. And we need to remember that this jail that we're talking about is actually under investigation because of an alleged the way that it runs and some of the problems that are allegedly going on in that jail. And Donald Trump has put out on his social media platforms that he's worried about those.
Yes. I wanted to ask you, because there's a lot of speculation around the kind of conditions that Trump will have to adhere to once he's released after his formal arrest. And a lot of people saying that it'll be difficult for Trump to adhere to it because it says that you should not be issuing any threats or making remarks that will lead to an inference that he's trying to influence witnesses or even his co-arrestees. Now, in that context, again, with the 2024 elections, the campaigning gaining speed, if that sort of an eventuality does occur that Trump is arrested, what sort of an impact would that have on his own campaign?
Well, you've really hit the nail on the head there, because as this is all going on, as he is facing his 4th criminal charges, set of charges this year, Donald Trump is also busy campaigning to be president of the United States once again. Now, last night here in the United States, we saw the first GOP nominations have a major debate where we saw them talk about some of the key issues that are going on, you know, across the country that people are talking about, from abortion rights to the economy and much more. Donald Trump didn't take part in that debate. He said that he's leading so far in the polls that there would be no reason for him to submit himself to that, to take questions and to put himself among the other candidates. And it is true that he does seem to be continuing to lead in those polls. A Reuters poll released earlier this month suggested that he was leading by almost 50%, and quite far behind him was the Florida governor Ron DeSantis, who was really on less than 20%. So he does seem to have that significant advantage. Now, the other thing to note is that every time he's been in court before, his ratings have actually gone up, and that's because he's really continuing to peddle this narrative that these are politically motivated charges. This is a witch hunt against him being run by the Democrats to basically stop him from returning to the White House. Donald Trump does deny any wrongdoing in both the Georgia racketeering case, but also in the other cases that he's facing. And it'll really be up to voters to decide, assuming that he does become that nominee, whether they want him to lead the country again.
Okay, and in the eventuality, if it comes down to an arrest, we don't know what will happen really if his supporters, his base will storm the prison as well, like they did the Capitol, but that's an eventuality, and we'll come to that bridge if we ever cross it, because that would really rile up his support base as well. Don't see that happening right now. Sally, thanks a lot for joining us. Now, the Pragyan rover from India's Chandrayaan-3 has successfully exited the spacecraft and has begun its exploration of the lunar surface. Taking to social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, the Indian Space Research Organization confirmed on Thursday that the Chandrayaan-3's rover has ramped down from the lander and that India has taken its first moonwalk. Well, world leaders at the Brics summit have congratulated Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the success, that is the success of Chandrayaan-3's lunar landing. Heads of state met Prime Minister Modi at a banquet dinner hosted by South African President and congratulated him for India's massive achievement. Now, as India becomes only the 4th nation in the world to successfully land on the moon with Chandrayaan-3 and the first on the lunar South Pole, this historic event has not only solidified India's position in the space race, it has garnered widespread international response. Along with global leaders and international organizations, the world media has also been covering this landmark achievement far and wide. US publication Washington Post covered the event with the headline, "India lands a spacecraft softly on the moon's surface." The New York Times said, and I quote, "India is on the moon. Lander's success moves nation to next space chapter," unquote. And another main headline asked the question, quote again, "What's next for India in space exploration?" End quote. Reuters also called it a victory cry of a new India. And for more on this, I'm joined by my colleague William Zenzo from the studio. William, it's been an amazing feat really, and we're still hearing a lot of excitement around the world because of what's expected from the rover over the next 14 days, isn't it?
India's moon landing has created significant excitement in the United States. Bill Nelson, the administrator of the National Aeronautics Space Agency, better known as NASA, posted a message of congratulations on the social media network X, praising India for being the 4th country to successfully soft land a spacecraft on the moon, and wrote that he was glad to be a partner on the mission. NASA provided access to its deep space network of radio antenna for communications with the Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft. The historic achievement is also significant for the U.S.'s own space ambitions. Washington sees itself in competition with China, which hopes to send astronauts to the moon by 2030. NASA had hoped to schedule its own first crewed moon landing in more than 5 decades for 2025, although it recently said the timeline for the Artemis 3 mission could slip into 2026. Unlike China, the U.S. views India as a partner. During Prime Minister Modi's visit to Washington earlier this year, the country signed up to the Artemis Accords, becoming the 27th signatory. Those countries have agreed to share scientific discoveries and create safety zones, allowing countries to do their own work on the lunar surface without disturbances. The State Department also congratulated India on X, writing that your success will power the imagination and light the future of people around the world. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan also praised what he called the historic landing and wrote that he looked forward to deepening our partnership with India on space exploration in the years ahead. Ira Spitzer reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
Even the United Kingdom has congratulated India for its lunar feat. John Beaver looks now at the reaction to the successful mission from a country that has had recent setbacks in trying to get into space.
and India have long had a close relationship that's only been getting closer in recent months, so perhaps no surprise that there was a lot of praise for India's successful moon mission. The UK Space Agency was quick to send their congratulations on X, what used to be called Twitter, saying that history had been made. The British High Commission in India called it a giant step forward for the whole world. In Dublin, the Indian cricket team were keeping a close eye on proceedings ahead of their match against Ireland. When it comes to space, the UK is second only to the United States in terms of the number of satellites it produces. The space sector here employs almost 50,000 people, with a speciality in smaller and nano satellites. But it's not yet successfully deployed them from UK soil, instead having to outsource the launching to other countries. The most recent attempt here in southwest England was a high-profile failure when a rocket launched in mid-air from a specially modified jumbo jet had a technical fault and failed to make it to orbit. Virgin Orbit, the company behind the attempt, folded 4 months after the failed mission. So experts in the UK are well aware of how difficult successful space missions are, and all have been quick to congratulate India on a job very well done. John Beaver in the UK, reporting for DD India.
And further on India's successful lunar mission, the President of the United Nations General Assembly has congratulated India. Paulina Kubiak, the spokesperson for the President, has said this is a great achievement.
It is something that we kind of shared this morning. I mean, the President congratulates India, obviously. It was within the OPGA office, many of the Indian colleagues were celebrating that achievement.
And India's ambassador to the United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj, also called the successful soft landing of the moon mission a historic moment for humanity.
Quote the Prime Minister of India himself on this: India's successful moon mission is not India's alone. This is a year in which the world is witnessing India's G20 presidency. Our approach of one Earth, one family, one future is resonating across the globe. This human-centric approach that we represent has been welcomed universally. Our moon mission is also based on the same human-centric approach. Therefore, this success belongs to all of humanity, and it will help moon missions by other countries in the future. The Prime Minister went on to say that I am confident that all countries in the world, including those from the global south, are capable of achieving such feats. We can all aspire for the moon and beyond.
Moscow too has congratulated India for successfully landing a spacecraft on the moon's south pole days after Russia's own mission crashed into the lunar surface. Russia stressed the importance of this breakthrough for the entire humanity. Dasha Chernashova is in Moscow for more.
Russia congratulates India on the successful landing on the moon's south pole. Russia's space agency Roscosmos says the exploration of the moon is important for the whole of humanity. In the future, it may become a platform for the deeper mastering of space. Russian President Vladimir Putin also congratulated Indian Prime Minister, saying that it is a major step in space exploration and the evidence of India's impressive progress in science and technology. On the sidelines of the Brics summit, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also congratulated his Indian counterpart. Experts from Russia's Academy of Sciences say India made an important breakthrough that would keep the country among the most high-tech and industrial states of the world. But this landing took place just days after Russia's own mission, first to the moon in 47 years, Luna 25, crashed into the moon's surface. The craft was supposed to land on the moon's south pole too, but spun out of control after a problem preparing for pre-landing orbit. Russian scientists say most likely there will be no relaunch of the Luna 25, since the vehicles for the next missions are already prepared, and it will take a while to change their programs. Dasha Chernashova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Japan is now discharging treated nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. The highly controversial project started on Thursday after years of planning. The water has been treated to strip it of radioactive materials in a special facility after being used to cool molten fuel from the Fukushima nuclear power plant, which was wrecked after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Chris Gilbert sends this report from Tokyo. Now, vendors in Beijing's seafood market have raised concerns about the release of treated water from Japan's Fukushima nuclear power plant. China, which is the world's biggest importer of Japanese seafood, has already banned imports from some Japanese territories, and vendors have already started looking for substitutes of Japanese seafood. China is showing strong opposition and has condemned Japan's move, citing major safety issues.
A lot of ingredients in our products are from Japan. If they discharge nuclear waste into the sea, it will certainly have an impact, and we may not dare to even use their products anymore in the future. We will definitely try to avoid importing these raw materials from Japan. We consider using ingredients from Russia instead, looking for possible substitutes. We need to firmly boycott Japanese products in future.
If Japan insists on discharging nuclear wastewater into the open sea, it will not only impact the seafood industry, but also on water resources and the whole of humanity. It's not just about the seafood industry.
The release of Fukushima wastewater has led to several protests in and around Hong Kong as well. Protesters were seen carrying posters of Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in a symbolic Chinese funeral frame. The demonstrators have called Japan's move irresponsible, illegal and immoral. They said the contaminated water would pose serious health risks. And in a further update to Japan's decision to start discharging the wastewater, China has completely banned import of seafood from Japan. With more from Hong Kong, here's Andrew Wood.
Well, no matter what Tokyo says about the safety of the discharges of this radioactive water, nobody in the region, very few people in the region, seem to be prepared to accept Tokyo's assurances that the discharge is safe. Tokyo seems to be losing an awful lot of friends around the region by doing this. Here in Hong Kong, there were small protests close to the Japanese consulate. In South Korea, about 16 protesters tried to break into the Japanese embassy. We've seen China ban all imports of Japanese seafood and said that it was Japan was selfish and irresponsible by discharging this water. The ban here in Hong Kong actually came into effect before Japan actually started to release the water into the sea. Now, this is quite a big blow economically for for Japan, because China, the mainland of China and Hong Kong are the two biggest markets for Japanese seafood and agricultural exports. Here in Hong Kong, for example, sales are usually around about $500 million a year of seafood, seaweed and other aquatic products. North Korea has weighed in as well. Now, there's not really a lot of love lost between North Korea and Japan, but North Korea was saying, well, this was a crime against humanity. So, no matter what the scientific evidence says, Tokyo has really failed to win over so many people around the region. That can't be good for its soft power. And yes, Japan is going to lose an awful lot of friends by doing this. In Hong Kong, I'm Andrew Wood reporting for DD India.
Back home in India, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually addressed the G20 trade ministers meeting, which was taking place in Jaipur in the western Indian state of Rajasthan. During his address on Thursday, Prime Minister Modi said India is committed to becoming the third largest global economy in the next few years, and as the current G20 president, it's India's responsibility to rebuild confidence in international trade and investment processes.
During the last 9 years, India has become the 5th largest global economy. This is the result of our sustained efforts. We embarked on the journey of reform, perform, and transform in 2014. We have increased competitiveness and enhanced transparency. We have expanded digitization and promoted innovation. We have established dedicated freight corridors and built industrial zones. We have moved away from red tape to red carpet and liberalized FDI flows.
So India is working to a plan. That's all we have in this edition of DD India's News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on all the developments of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, earlier Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news and updates as they break here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and for all of us here in Delhi, thanks a lot for watching DD India News Hour.
Your name in our